Hey guys, it's Joe Madden here. Today I'm joined by Dave Cokin. We are talking ACC conference preview. Dave, let's jump right into it. Boston College. This is an improved
Yeah,
program. What are you liking from them?
I look. BC really showed something last year. The coaching change was a good one for this program. Adazio was not connecting with the players there. They moved on. I thought Boston College showed quite a bit of improvement last year, and I think they've got a good chance to continue to improve this year. I like the quarterback, Jerkovich. I think he's a nice player. Look, there's still some issues on this team. I think they could be really weak at linebacker. But the offensive backfield is now a strength, and that's something that they've had good runners for a while at Boston College, but they haven't had a quarterback they can really rely on in a while, and I think they do now. I like the offensive line as well. I think this is going to be a very productive team offensively. If they get some improvement on the defense, particularly at the questionable spot linebacker, Boston College could be a lot better than people think. I think they're going to be a representative team as it is.
Okay, let's jump into Clemson. The question everyone's
Yeah.
asking, are they still the team to beat without Trevor Lawrence?
Yes. I've got them as my highest power-rated team in the country. They're absolutely loaded.
I love it.
I mean, Trevor Lawrence isn't there anymore. Next man up. It's not like, look, DJ's not going to be. I'm not going to bother with his last name. Okay, I'll let somebody else handle that because I'll screw it up. But he's really good. He might not be Trevor Lawrence, but he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country, regardless. I've got him in my top 25 as far as quarterbacks go, and in that system, he might be spectacular. They have no weaknesses. I mean, the only position you could look at and say, well, they might not be as good as they were last year is probably wide receiver, and that's about it. And I'm pretty sure Clemson has some new guys that can run the 100-yard dash in like 3 seconds to take over that position. So there's just no weaknesses at all in this team. The only thing that can hurt Clemson is boredom. So Dabo's going to have to keep them fired up on a weekly basis, but it would be, to me, a massive upset if this team isn't in the playoffs again. And that means they're going to win the ACC. There's a lot of good quality programs in this conference, but nobody's at Clemson's level.
Okay, Dave, let's move on to Duke. Some people, when you ask them about Duke and football, they say, hey, basketball's starting soon. What are your thoughts on Duke?
Yeah, and that might be the best answer because look, if Duke were in another conference in football, they might have a chance to make a little bit of noise, but they're playing mid-major level football in a very good conference. There's just not enough strength on this team for them to compete on a weekly basis. Cutcliffe's a hell of a coach, but their offensive backfield isn't very good. The defensive line and the secondary are weak. I just don't see much chance for them to do anything more than maybe win 1 or 2 games in conference play, and it looks like another losing season for the Blue Devils.
Yeah, I definitely could see it being that way. Now, moving on to Florida State. They've got some great players. What's your thoughts?
To me, it's all on Mackenzie Milton, who I'm thrilled to see is back in action. Terrible injury a couple of years ago. If you watched it, it was just gruesome. And he's been out for a long time, but he's transferred now to Florida State. He's got some very good people around him there. And if he's what he was previously at Central Florida, Florida State's going to be a pretty good football team. They've got some strengths. Listen, I think the defense for Florida State is vastly improved. And if the Seminoles can get the production out of Milton and the offense that they're desiring, they're going to be a good program this year. I'm not saying they're going to be right back to the old glory days of Florida State, but they'll be good enough to be playing in a significant bowl at the end of the year. Not a playoff position, but still a real good bowl game.
Absolutely. I see them there too. What about Georgia Tech? They're a team I don't see too many holes within their team. Are you expecting a lot from them?
No. And I think you made a good point in saying there's not a lot of holes in the team, but there's not a lot of strengths in the team either. And they're kind of a better version of Duke in that they'd be representative in a lot of leagues, but not in this one. In this one, they're going to have to scratch and claw for victories. They're pretty much average everywhere. There are no glaring weaknesses, but there are no real good strengths for the program either. So I think 500 would be a ceiling for them, and I'm not sure they can get to that level.
Yeah, I could see it too. Moving on to Louisville, they had a disappointing 2020. What do you think for 2021? Do you think they can improve on what we saw last year?
I think they should improve. It was kind of a year where everything went wrong for the Cardinals. They had a lot of problems with COVID. Okay, and some teams had it worse than others, and they had it pretty bad. So I think if they've got everything lined up correctly this year, things should be a lot better. Cunningham's a good quarterback. The wide receivers look to be an area where we'll have to wait and see, but I think it's they could be pretty good. The one worry I've got for them is on the defensive line. That's an area where they don't project real well on the defensive line, and that, I think, could be an issue for them in terms of stopping the run. And that means their offense isn't on the field if they can't stop the run. So I've got Louisville kind of middle of the pack, but with a small arrow up, because I do think that things can't go as badly as they did last year for them.
They can't possibly go as badly. Talking about Miami, there's big expectations for this team.
Yeah.
Are you living up to the hype?
Sort of. I'm with an asterisk, because we kind of keep hearing this over and over again about Miami. It's like, oh, they're ready to break through. But on paper, they really are ready to break through. I mean, this is a really good football team. The offensive backfield is flat out loaded. They got to keep King on the field, obviously, but he's a tremendous college quarterback. Again, I'll look at the only area that I've got some real concern for them is at linebacker. I think that's a questionable area, but they've got good athletes back there. Look, to me, it's kind of a put up or shut up season for Miami. We've been hearing this for a few years. They're back. The Canes are ready to roll. And then they kind of don't. Not that they were a bad football team last year, but I think it's fair to say that they didn't quite live up to expectations. Some of that might have to do with the King injury, because he was still getting acclimated with the offense. But there's no excuse for Miami not to be the team that's at least going to make the most noise in terms of maybe being an upset candidate against Clemson. I don't think they can beat Clemson, but they're on paper, they're probably the second best team in the league.
Yeah, I could see that happening, definitely. North Carolina has an elite offense. We've got Sam Howell. Do you think he could take the Heisman Trophy?
Yeah, I think Sam Howell's a legitimate candidate to be in New York City at the Downtown Athletic Club at the end of the season. The guy's a terrific college quarterback. Whether he projects as an NFL quarterback, I don't know, and I don't really care, because this is all about college football. He's loaded. The offense is really strong. Wide receivers might not be quite as good as they were last year. The defense is better on paper than it was a year ago. That was the problem for the Tar Heels last year. They were going up and down the field, but they couldn't stop anybody. I think they'll stop more people this year, and they should be a quality program. Not quite as good as Miami on paper, but certainly a team that has a chance to step forward and maybe be the second best team in the conference if Miami falls short.
Absolutely. NC State, we've got a new quarterback coming in. Who do we think it's going to be?
Well, no, Devin Leary's going to be there, and Leary's a guy I'm high on. I think he's going to be better than he was, and I think NC State's got a chance to be a really good football team. They've got a very good defense, and they are particularly strong at the linebacker position. It's one of the best core of linebackers in the country. So NC State, I believe, is an under-the-radar team that I believe you might have a chance to make some money with early in the season. They're good. Not superstar good, but good enough to be very strong out of the gate and maybe a good point spread moneymaker early in the season.
Okay, Dave, I just wrote down Pittsburgh will make me money in the start of the season, so thank you for that. Let's move on to Pittsburgh. Sorry. I was already jumping ahead. NC State will make us money. Let's move on to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, there's lots of opinions on this. What are your thoughts on this team?
I'm on the upside. I'm on the upside of the Panther bandwagon. I like this team. I like the quarterback. I don't think he's a superstar, but I think he, at this point in his career, should be able to manage a game really well. I don't know if he's got the greatest set of receivers to throw to, but I really like this Pittsburgh team, and it's up to Narduzzi to get the most out of them. This is a team that I think could be the dark horse to make a run at second place, second overall in the conference. I'm not going by division. I don't care about the divisions. I'm doing the conference from an overall standpoint. I think Pittsburgh has, call it maybe an outside chance, but a chance at least to be the second best team in the league. And I think if Narduzzi doesn't get it done with this team, they need to start looking around for another coach. All the pieces are there. There aren't any real weaknesses. Linebacker, maybe a little bit of a concern, but I think the Panthers are a team that has a chance to be really good, and now it's up to the coaching staff to get the most out of what is the most talented roster they've had in several years.
Okay, moving on to Syracuse. Have you seen them made any adjustments to their O-line that's really going to help them this year?
No, I don't.
Me either.
And looking at them, I've got them with Duke at the bottom of the league. The secondary isn't very good, and bad secondaries in today's college football, that's a recipe for disaster. I don't like their receivers very much. I don't think they're going to be able to get down the field with big plays. They just look like they're stuck in mud. And to me, it's a toss-up as to who's the worst team in the league, Syracuse or Duke. And it might just be Syracuse because I think Duke's a better coach team. So I've got Syracuse on my ratings dead last in the ACC. Another rough season for the Orange.
Moving on to Virginia. What are you liking for this team? I see it as a rock-solid team. Are you seeing the same?
Yeah. Bronco Mendenhall is one of the best. He gets the max out of his talent basically every year. Virginia, on paper, cannot compete with the top teams in the league, and I don't think anybody should expect them to. But they're going to beat the teams they're supposed to beat. They're really not weak anywhere. They've got a few guys who could qualify as stars on the team. I just don't think they're ever going to be good enough to make a run at being a super team. But why not another 7 or 8 win season and another decent bowl game? Cavaliers at this point under Bronco Mendenhall are a very solid program.
I'm loving it. Virginia Tech, what do you think of this team? I think their defense needs improvement, and if they do, they can be a good team.
And on paper, the defense should be vastly improved. Now, Virginia Tech's another team that, if you go back to the start of last season, ran into a load of COVID issues, just a ton of problems. And maybe that's an excuse, but I think it was a legitimate excuse for why this team never developed the consistency they should have had last year. There's no reason this can't be one of the really good teams in the conference. I think Virginia Tech has a chance to be in that mix, to be right behind Clemson in the battle for who's second best in the conference. And it's up to the coaching staff to make sure that the same problems that befell them last year don't happen again. I mean, everybody's familiar with the precautions and steps you have to take, and you can't use that as an excuse again this year. I think it, again, was a legitimate excuse for a lot of programs last year. So we'll cancel that out, and I'll kind of give Virginia Tech a pass on their disappointing result from last season. But on paper, this is a quality football team that's got a chance to win a lot of games. I can see them easily getting to 9 wins and a big-time bowl at the end of the year.
Moving on to Wake Forest. Last but not least, what do you think of Wake Forest? High hopes, low hopes?
Well, their hopes have to be realistic. They really can't compete on an annual basis with the power teams in this conference. What they have to do is maximize what they have on their roster, steal a win or two against teams they can compete with, and win the games they're supposed to win. And if they can do that, you know, they can be a 5 or 6 win team and maybe sniff a minor bowl at the end of the season. Unfortunately, the ACC looks like it's pretty loaded this year, and I don't think this is going to be a good season for Wake Forest. They're better than Syracuse. They're better than Duke. They're probably in the same neighborhood as Georgia Tech, but I don't think they can get much higher than that.
Absolutely. So, Dave, can you recap your top team and your sleeper team for this season?
Well, Clemson, the top team is easy. That's Clemson. And it would be the upset of the 21st century if Clemson, to me, doesn't win the league again. I guess Miami fans might object to that. We'll have to wait and see. But the team that it's a tough one for me as far as the sleeper team that makes a lot of noise. I'll divide it. I'll give you 2. North Carolina State and Pittsburgh. I think they've both got a chance to be really good this season. To be honest, I trust the NC State coaching staff a little more than the Pittsburgh coaching staff. On paper, I think Pittsburgh's a little better than NC State. In any event, I think both these teams have a chance to be very good this season and be very good out of the gate in terms of making us money.
Absolutely. Well, thanks you guys for joining us. Make sure you go over to WagerTalk.com and follow Dave's page for all of his picks.